Dum da dum da dum da dum. Ooh, coffee. Shit. I had to pee. I don't remember if I peed or not. Quick, where's the kitten? It can come sit up on my lap and hit the bladder where it always fucking hits, and then it'll let me know if I have to pee or not. I'm pretty sure I peed. Aren't you proud of me? Oh, I know. I'm just being obnoxious. So, I have a branding announcement, because I don't think this should be a brand. I could save this as one of the many different patentable things that I, come up with. Oh, thanks. 3 likes already. Cheers. Howdy, howdy, everybody. Polyponics. Okay? Creating product from pollution. There are ways to reduce materials usage, to strengthen existing processes. There's a lot of different things that you can do. Trash. Especially plastic. Oh, especially plastic that's just sitting fucking around everywhere. But more than the physical things. You know what I'd like to do? I'd like to just buy up a little piece of land next to every factory that's got one of them big pipes of pollution shit. And just say, "Excuse me, sir, can I have some of your pollution?" And just pipe some of it. Just fucking pipe some of it over to a greenhouse or something. Like, what happens when I do this to it? What happens when I do that to it? I mean, there's a lot of things based on your basic factory output type chemicals that are obvious. Like, for instance, we've discussed that you can probably grow some fucking brilliant ornamental flowers, on your average fucking coal plant, any sort of exhaust. If you can slow down that flow enough to where you can get the carbon to settle, okay, and what I had suggested was a misting, sort of like a slowed down version of a combustion cylinder, okay, only instead of a fuel injector, it's a water injection that brings the soot down. But that's such an obvious idea, I refuse to believe that it hasn't been done before. Okay, it's just something that we need to, of all the fucking things we can make trend, trending stuff, of all the things we can make trend, can we make a little bit of fucking wherewithal? Just a little bit of civic responsibility, just a little bit of, like, actually giving a shit. Hashtag give a shit. How about that? Hashtag give a shit. Wait, what? Like a bong? So how's it going, Joey and Conway and Jordan and whoever else is here? I'm wearing my shirt, you know, because I gotta represent my team, because my fucking boys go on my Facebook wall, even though I don't go on Facebook anymore, and they made a happy birthday post. I don't even have my fucking birthday on Facebook. They know my fucking birthday. That's awesome. Fucking Ryan Eversley, touring car champion. Fuck. That's cool, man. I'm not a celebrity person, but that's the touring car champion. And he's a really nice guy. Obviously. Anyways. One day I would like to buy part of Honda just to have the capability of development. Right. Always engages with the fans. He's always good to his fans. Especially persistent ones. Like my wife and I. But when he was new to the crew, I welcomed him. Like I went out of my way to send him a link. Just to credify myself, okay, if that's a word, right? Just so I could tell him, hey there, Sonny. He's my age. He's like a year young. Never mind. I think he's just a little bit younger than me. Anyway, I just wanted to tell him, I can see the way you're taking them fucking corners. Once you get used to those next year, once you get used to these tracks in this circuit, you're gonna be the top driver. That was 5 years ago. I could just see the way he was fucking just everything he did, from the way he got that fucking outside wheel, what I call a planter, okay? When you can take just enough of the outside wheel and put it off the track in the dirt, just enough to where that car gets just that little bit of extra slide through the corner. Just not like a damaging, not like a momentum losing slide, but there's just this little extra bit of turn in that you can get from just putting that fucking wheel in the grass just a little bit. Not the front wheel. You got to get it to where the front wheel stays in, and just as you turn that fucking outside wheel, and that one little bit of slide that it has will turn into a lot more slide, and then you fucking just ride into the brakes all the way down to the apex, and I see him do that shit every fucking chance there was to do that on the track. And I saw his patience. I saw his reflex. You know, that ability to fucking come up all the way and then fake somebody out, get them to fake up a little bit, and then fucking pop out on them anyway. Oh. See Ryan do that shit, and there's very few drivers. You know, like I could probably name most of them. There's very few drivers that are that good. You know, Schumacher, Massa, Raikkonen, those guys on the Rolex team that I don't like, Rojas and Mimo Rojas is a good driver, but he's a dick. Okay, that's just been my impression over the years. But it takes a certain fucking level of focus and reflex and just one with the car. You have to be one with the car and one with your environment. You have to like have fucking ninjutsu on the track, you know? And I saw that in him early on. And it wasn't, it was just a matter of time until Honda got the advantage again. They've been, you know, superior engineering is one thing, but like, okay, when they used to go against the Mazdas were a turbo car, and they were going against those. Now they've been going against these little Hyundais, and you know they're a Hyundai, so it's like you want to dismiss it, but you can't really dismiss Hyundai anymore. Hyundai has really gotten its shit together over the years. Ever since they started making all the crap cars called Kia, they've had at least one good car per year. Hyundai. One good car per year. And that's a lot, because it's Hyundai. But this one good car per year tends to be the one that they race. They've raced their big sedan a few years ago, and now they're racing this little tiny fucking hatchback. I don't even think I've seen it in America. If I have, I haven't noticed it. You know? Like, it's just a boring, it looks like a little Ford Focus, only just a little more in the front. Less Aston Martin, more Maybe it was designed in France, I don't know. But these little fucking cars, there were two of them. And they were just 1-2 in almost every fucking race. Just because they're so lightweight, you know? Civic is a light car, but Civic has never been the lightest car, you know? The i30? Yeah, sounds about right. I'm not really sure. But it's, yeah. Just a little tiny fucking car. And the Hondas will have the legs on them on the straight, but then that fucking little hatchback barely has to hit its brakes. And the lack of rear weight. Okay, when you set up a front-wheel drive race car, you have your front wheels, which, you know, pretty much always go the same. Okay? Like, you have to know what you're doing. That's not what I'm trying to explain right now. When you set up the rear wheels on a front-wheel drive race car, you might think it's just not important. Okay, obviously the front wheels are important. You got to tune those to the track. You have to have them at the right camber angle for the weight of your car, for your spring brake, for your body roll. Okay, but the toe, generally speaking, the only thing with toe in the front is the more toe out you have, the more snappy that steering's going to be, the less stable, the more it's going to turn quickly, okay, the more it's going to respond. I don't particularly like that. I like lack of tire wear, you know? In your front wheel drive car, you don't want that fucking toe out, to me, because of the extra tire wear, all right? But when it comes to the rear tires, the rear wheels, you can have them more straight up and down if you want them to slide. You can have them sticking out like this if you want them to grip, okay? But depending on the weight of the rear of the car, whether it's a hatchback or a sedan or even a station wagon, the toe angle gets adjusted to determine how much it just kind of hangs out. Or I was talking about with that planning maneuver. When that rear wheel is towed out just a little bit, front wheels straight, rear wheels towed out, when you stomp on the brakes and get down in the corner and start to angle that car, this loses grip and this increases grip as it leans down. Now, on a Honda multi-link suspension, what makes a Honda so fucking good around those little corners in the city, okay? What makes a CRV the zippiest little damn SUV there is, even better handling than a RAV4, which is smaller, okay? Yes, a CRV will amaze you, okay? It's got a multi-link rear suspension, so that when it squats down, when you slam on the brakes and you're fucking making that turn, you're making that little right turn in town, whatever it squats down on actually goes further out. So the rear wheel goes further out to the left when you're turning right. So it makes it kind of like a four-wheel steering setup. All right. And I believe the newer Civics have that. For a while, Civics didn't have that. It was everything but Civics had that. Civics and Integras did not have that during the 90s. Accords, CRVs, Pilots, they all have it. That's why you can do donuts in a fucking Honda Pilot. And they're fun. And they're easy. It's just like, yeah, turn the wheel, hit the gas. Oh, shit. But when you got a little Civic-like hatchback, because there's so little weight, you know, basically these new Hyundais are like the old EP3 Civics, okay? Just a little tiny, like 95 Civic. Only it's, you know, new car. They make them with airbags and shit when they make them for the street. So obviously this little thing, once it's in street trim, is going to be really more than likely underpowered because of all the safety gear and shit that they have on little cars like that nowadays. But in race trim, it doesn't need that multi-link. So it's saving an extra control arm. Not only is it, you know, there's no trunk, but there's an extra little control arm that's gone. There's just no weight back there. So what you can do with that is basically the reason why they don't have the multi-link is when you slam that sucker up, that left rear wheel, the inside rear wheel, just comes the fuck off the ground. And then you don't need that much camber on the outside wheel. You just need it to be straight, because it's just basically got a fucking slide. So it's just like becomes like a little motorcycle skid kind of wheel. So because of that, there's no risk of like, well, I mean, there's still a risk. No matter what kind of car you're driving, if you fucking hit the brakes and turn the wheel too hard, you're gonna spin, okay? But when it comes to that fighting for the fucking brake zone at the end of a straightaway, okay? That little hatchback with no weight on the ass can go all the way in and really just come closer and closer to completely losing it without actually losing it, all right? Not to mention, because it's lighter, there's less wear on those front wheels, okay? So it took time, effort, tuning, and some amazing fucking driving ability for Ryan Eversley to beat those two Hyundais. But he got her done, man. And just once again, you know, it's been like 2 months since that fucking happened. But proud of that boy. Anyways. It's funny, like, I get given an Acura Integra. It's one of them things like moving to 70777. No choice. No choice in the matter. It just happened. It's the choice that I had to make in my life, and this is where I wound up. I had a choice between waiting 2 weeks for $400 or taking an Acura Integra at the moment where the roommate who was holding the lease on the place I was staying was leaving fucking town and I was about to be homeless. So I had no choice but to buy an Acura Integra as my first car. And I immediately lived in it. And within 3 days of having that car, I was delivering pizzas. Went from being a trim carpenter and trim painter mostly, to delivering pizzas. My next car, like, I had that house in Metairie that I was paying a tax lien on. It was $2,699 tax lien. Fucking house would have been mine. Wish I wouldn't have listened to my dad when he tried to make up for things. Yeah. But I, needed to go to college somehow, some way. Wound up going to, I guess, a half-assed excuse for a college. It was a complete waste of time. Who am I kidding? But anyways, moved out into Texas. Drove my fucking '88 Integra from New Orleans to Manville, Texas. Just what a fucking great old car. And because of this, and because everything my dad had told me, and everybody who had ever seen me with this old Integra had told me about how great Hondas were, and just because of the quality of the competition at the time, there was none. The Ford fucking Focus had just really started coming to America. But you had like a Chevy Cavalier, Corollas. Come on. Fucking Hondas. They're just so much better in every possible way. Like part for part, seriously. Part for part. So much better. But I wanted to pick out, like, the Honda for me. Now, my friend Chris had a GSR, the 1.7 liter, the one that they only had in America in 92, 93. Zoom just snapped at Bubbles. They're not dealing very well with the reduced feeding schedule. Anyways, so I was on CB7.com and G2IC.com. Those are the 92, 93, or the early 90s Accord and Integra websites, basically. And Honda Swap, and I was just looking on H Motors online at the actual motors available and seeing what they went to, and then comparing like the relevant American bodies to them. And I just wanted to decide what is the car for me. But I couldn't get the way the Integra, the old Integra's interior, just looked and felt out of my head. Be a passenger in that car, you will want to drive it. It's one of them ones where everything's kind of bent towards the driver, how they used to do that. But it's very, very NSX-like, very lean back and cockpit-like. And so I decided OBD1 92, 93 body style, and I wanted to get this XSI swap, because I realized you could get this 1.6 liter with lower miles than anything you could find in America in that 1.7 liter, and I could get it in an automatic. That just fucking tickled me. I would be one of the only people with that damn motor in an automatic, because they never made it in an automatic in America. They hardly made any of those dual overhead cam VTECs in automatic in America. And how did I wind up making friends with this guy? It was at the college I was going at, Alvin Community College. This normal-looking white boy, baseball player type, just wore blue jeans and a white T-shirt every day. I think he was Bruce Springsteen's cousin, or something. I don't know. No, way too tall. but he told me he had an Integra shell and give it to me for $500. And I wasn't expecting nothing. You know, I was like, okay, I'll come look at it. It was a white 93 LS Special Edition. Black leather interior. Black leather interior. Painted side moldings. Alloy rims. All factory trim. Spoiler, sunroof. With the fucking transmission hanging from one mount. And the axle just loosely hanging on the other side. And the motor blown up, sitting in the trunk. So I'm like, perfect. I didn't want the fucking stock motor anyways. It's literally the best possible body of that whole fucking generation. The best Integra body you could fucking want, basically. Okay, unless you're trying to track it. If you like the older shit like I do, this is just probably the most collectible, other than a GSR, that you could get. The perfect candidate for a B16 JDM swap. Okay. And I got that motor in. It was $1,600. It's $200 less than my H22. With the transmission, ECU, axles, alternator, everything you need. Everything you need. Power steering pump, everything. Manifolds, everything. Paid a guy another $400. I got my tax returns. I was already homeless by the time I got that car. Shit went south with my dad. Yeah. Because he found another woman. And, you know, he finds other women, and then he doesn't have time for his previous families and shit. And that's just, you know, that's fine. So this guy, David, this mechanic that I knew, I don't know, through a weed dealer or something, I don't fucking know. But he ran his little mechanic shop out of his garage at his house, kind of like Scotty Kilmer does. Actually, I would bet money that he knows Scotty Kilmer, because we're talking about Houston and this, you know, old school mechanic people. This guy's got a 71 Judge in parts in his attic. He's probably got it restored by now. He was like starting to put together the frame, but he had all the original fenders with Judge on it. The fucking, like the crazy 70s Judge, GTO Judge, in trash bags in his attic. Fucking open it up, I'm like, oh, original. So I gave him $400 or $500 to help me drop the motor in. By the time I made it back from college the next day, they had the fucking motor in. Him and his friend that works with him. And they needed me to look up and figure out the wiring and shit like that. But they had that fucking motor in with the old ECU plugged in, running, with fucking straight down pipe, just open header. Just header and just, and the fucking sound that thing was making. Oh, like, that's gonna be mine. And that is the car that I took to 144. Motherfucker, I'd be averaging 97 miles an hour going back and forth between Houston and New Orleans and various other road trips, and still be getting 27, 28 miles to the gallon. Automatic, okay? Which means You could just be sitting there sipping coffee and just stomping to fucking 8,000 RPMs. I mean, I love standards. I've had a couple standards. But don't get a standard unless you have an automatic too. You know, you don't want to drive a fucking standard every day. And if you do, you better be 20. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't, that's for young people. People without shit to do, you know. Me, I had joints to roll and pizzas to deliver, so I needed a fucking automatic, didn't I? Oh yeah, I'd roll them bitches one-handed. Running around, Hidalgo, Bodega. Inside joke. Yeah, inside joke. Only here on this channel can we actually have inside jokes. You know, it's supposed to be a YouTube channel. Yet somehow, it's more like a private chat room, isn't it? With you know, like a big forehead horizon type thing. My dad's talking about his ushering schedule and he can't come down. Man, unless Willie Nelson is playing, I don't want to hear it. He gets to see all kinds of fucking famous people though. That's cool. I don't even know where what the name of the place is he works. It's some convention center where they have like small but fancy concerts. I don't know. It sounds like a good retirement job to me, you know. Get to see all kinds of outdated celebrities of his generation. So. Anyway, so yeah, I'm back on good terms with my dad, but you know, don't expect much and you don't get disappointed. Well, so I was living in this guy's back room. I was gonna rent out his wife's old taco stand trailer and like live in that, but I wound up just living in my damn Integra instead. It just wasn't much point. It was just out of the way from where I had to work, and it's not like there was even running water in it, you know. So I lived in that 93 Integra with a swap motor. And I've said this before, I got what I consider to be one of those rare, blessed gifts of a deal when I bought that swap. And now I was way too noobish to take it apart and verify anything that was actually done to it, but I was just estimating based on the performance. Ridiculously fast, ran ridiculously well, got ridiculously good gas mileage, had more torque than I heard 1.6 liters could possibly have. I'd speculated that it had been stroked, okay, but I don't know. What I do know is that it had $200 spark plug wires. Now, in Honda tuning, there's a lot of different levels you can bring your Honda up to. And all of them work just fine on a pair of $70 spark plug wires. NGK. Nice, blue, pretty, perfectly good. Who the fuck puts $200 spark plug wire? I had to look up the part number. It was English, Japanese on the no actual English writing, just the numbers. Had numbers and then Japanese writing. And I had to look up the part number and just plug wires, JDM. Found them for sale. $195 fucking dollars for these plug wires. And that's all I knew about that motor, was that whoever had the shit before me paid $200 for their spark plug wires. I don't think it could have been cam swapped, okay? And if it is, I want to know what the hell cams they use, because I still got good gas mileage. But I'd put that shit in neutral, rev it to 4,500 RPMs, and AT shifter, slam it to second. Fucking tires would light up as it launched. It launched enough to like slam you back, okay? I had red compound polyurethane motor mounts on there, and I'd, you know, replaced all the axles and bushings and everything, and it was ready to go. But it had the factory rims on it. I think I was running like 19565, like the regular tiny little fucking tread pattern. And you'd slam it in a second, and the fucking wheels would light up just a little bit. They would skid, but still gripping forward. And it would go into VTEC like that. And then as it gripped, it got to the bottom of VTEC. While it gripped, it turned off of VTEC for just a second and went right back into VTEC for second gear. And I don't know what more you could ask from a naturally aspirated fucking 1.6 liter. And like the launch wasn't even its strength. It was the downshift. You know, you'd be going 55, stomp on the gas, fucking revs go to 7,800, climb to 8,200 before they shift. The sound, okay, it sounds like something from Nine Inch Nails music. It doesn't sound like a motor. It's like it sounds fucking digital. And, you know, probably gain 10 miles an hour per second, basically, at those higher RPMs, at those higher speeds, that downshift between 50 and 90. You'd just be fucking doing 90 before you even wanted to, like, or realized that you were. Just making the slightest effort to pass another car, and just like, oh, shit, okay, ooh. Slow down. And that's when I wound up finding that girl who lives on the Mexican border on Match.com. And she had a PlayStation 2 with Gran Turismo 3 or 4. And once I started playing Gran Turismo, I decided I liked cars. I decided I really liked my Integra. And I was like, from then on, just couldn't see myself in anything but a fucking built touring car. Like, I can't daily drive normal cars. And then after Katrina, I spent a whole lot of time watching the Speed Channel. After the hurricane, yeah. Up here in Baton Rouge. Got Cunningham in the TSX. Good 10 years before Ryan came around. And they were winning. 2 championships in a row. And off a year, and then another championship. Yeah, I picked the right brand. And the more I got to know that race team, the more I realized these guys don't just happen to drive Honda. They're like what Honda's about. You know, these are fucking good guys. So I kind of got fated into being an Acura Integra guy, and then further encouraged by fate. And then after living in my second Acura Integra, I lived in the 88 and I lived in the 93. I found the cure to NASCAR, man. Like Formula One, NASCAR, even prototype racing. It all gets boring after a while. You know, people wind up like lining up for the most part, and you only see like periods of competition where people are actually trying to pass each other. Not in touring car races. No. Especially in this World Challenge race, this series that I watch. They do what's called balance of performance. If your car is too light, too fast, the other cars don't have an advantage, they add some weight to your car. Put a restrictor on it, something like that. They slow you down. They make everybody as even as possible. And they're driving the same cars you see every day on the road on your way to work. Okay? They're not driving some tube frame weird shit. They're driving the actual car that the factory built. They just took everything out of it. In most classes, they'll stitch weld the chassis. In all classes, they install a roll cage. And depending on which class, they'll modify the engine and suspension. There used to be a class where they don't allow any engine or suspension modifications. It's just a factory car with a roll cage. And you know, they got plexiglass windows, so it's not like fucking glass is gonna shatter. No airbags, so it's not like they're gonna deploy. And you know, if somebody's in your way, you just kind of give them a little nudge. They race, man. They race. They're not worried about shit but winning. You know, it's cool. Like maybe tire conservation is the biggest concern. Like, oh look, I lost a bumper. Oh, a little less drag. Anyways. But Hondas, man. What made Honda Honda is two things. One is the overall commitment to quality that they get from being a high quality motorcycle manufacturer, okay? And their pride as engine builders that comes from that, okay? Their general quality comes from their pride as engine builders. But the other thing that made Honda so successful is a single patent. One patent. VTEC. variable timing electronic control. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with VTEC, picture an engine cylinder, okay? And you have your little valves. This valve opens up, the air and fuel goes in, it closes, explosion happens, and this valve opens up, and it pumps the air and exhaust out, okay? These valves are not Andorian antenna, as I'm kind of demonstrating them on my forehead, but these valves are opened by what's called a camshaft. Okay, it's two little rotating guys, and there's like a little lever. Okay, and when the cam rotates, there's a little knob on it, and the little lever gets lifted by the little knob as the camshaft rotates. Okay, that goes against a little thing like that, and then there's the valve on the other end attached to a spring that keeps it down. Okay, so it doesn't just, you know, bump away from it. Okay, and that's how the valves go up and down, allowing the motor to breathe and get air and fuel and combust and then exhaust, air and fuel, combust, exhaust. Well, these cams usually have one lobe per cylinder that controls how wide those valves goes. VTEC started with 2, now has 3 different lobes, and they have an interlocking mechanism on these levers. And then you have this VTEC solenoid that uses oil pressure to slam a little pin and locks up these guys and makes this valve open up with a bigger cam. So it's going to be on your normal little knob. Okay, the cams sit right by each other, like 3 little knobs like this on a oh shit, here, my sword will be my camshaft for now, and it spins like that. Okay, and the middle one is the VTEC cam lobe. All right, so your racing cam and your economy cam. Okay, normally you're driving on this cam, okay, and it's just spinning over and over again, and that's what's making that little thing bounce. All right, when VTEC hooks up, it goes like that, and then they all race together, and then the valves open wider, and it makes more power. And the simplicity of that little locking mechanism has allowed Honda to have the only variable valve timing system with no failures. Okay? Now, your VTEC solenoid can go bad. You can break a wire. VTEC can stop working. But as far as when VTEC engages, has it ever fucked anything up? Nope. Never. Not once. That's amazing. And that is why Hondas are so much better. Because every other company's attempt at a variable valve patent has been an abysmal failure. They use different fucking like actuated pulleys and yeah, Toyota's is shit, Ford's is The VTEC system is flawless. Okay, it used to be my old cars, the way I get my cars. It'll have a set RPM, and when you pass that RPM, VTEC engages, and that's fun. Okay, all you gotta do is get it there, and you know. And you know, if you don't put a fart can and stupid exhaust on your car, you actually get to feel the torque instead of just making a lot of noise and not going anywhere. Yeah, the Ford just kind of makes more noise, and it doesn't bog down as you get higher, but there's no VTEC feeling. You know, there's not that drop. Like, all they managed to do, see what happens when you have the small camshaft, as you approach the higher RPMs, that limited amount of breathing only does so good. So what Ford and Toyota have done is they've kind of delayed that. They don't actually raise the valve any higher, they just delay it. Okay, so that overlap kind of allows a higher RPM performance. Okay, but VTEC makes the valve go wider, which means more air for the length of time of the cylinder. More air molecules actually get into that cylinder, which means more powerful combustion. Not just longer combustion, which is again why it makes so much noise, because they're just opening up those valves for a longer period of time, essentially dumping fuel in there. And like, this is going to be painful for some people who understand the system, but an amusing analogy for others. Some people will disagree with me vehemently like this, but basically they're trying to turn your motor into a turbine, a confused little turbine. It's not a turbine. Stop trying to make it act like a turbine. It's not supposed to just sit there and have fucking, like, I mean, the valves barely even close in that system. Anyways, but because the VTEC valves keep the same timing, okay? They keep the same timing, they just open wider. It allows for full compression of that air-fuel mixture, and that's how you get 100 horsepower per liter every fucking time. In fact, they've gone way over that. Naturally aspirated, they've had the record for decades now. Decades. Ever since '86, when they came out with my first motor, 1.6 liter V16A. Now, the specific combustion method, GM and everybody else has pretty effectively copied it. I don't know how specifically they do all of theirs, but I guess it's just something that's sort of unpatentable, so that everybody's process just kind of comes out the same way. But what you're talking about is the namesake of the Honda Civic. Okay, it's called Controlled Vortex Combustion Chamber. All right, CVCC. And what that does is, when you have your, picture these valves, right? Actually, there's 2 of them per cylinder on each side. So it's 4 valves per cylinder. When you have 16 valves, 4 valves per cylinder. And even in a 12 valve per cylinder setup, you'll have 2 intake and 1 exhaust valve on the older CVCC, right? And what happens is they essentially just get a cam to open up a little bit sooner than the other one. All right, so one valve opens up just a little bit sooner than the other one. They'll both close at the same time. So basically that the lobe, say non-VTEC, it'll be like that kind of, like one will just open a little bit sooner, but then they'll both close at the same time. Okay, and as that spins around, you know, one just ramps up a little bit sooner. Okay. Because of that, one valve opening before the other one, a vortex is created inside the combustion chamber, and that allows for more complete combustion, because it keeps the fuel droplets suspended. Makes a little just tiny vortex, and then spark. And like, picturing that, the way it compresses too, like, okay, it's going in one valve, okay, while being sucked in. So it starts this little mini tornado, right? And then it squeezes the little mini tornado. And then it goes boom. It's an exploding mini tornado. That's just a fun thought. Exploding mini tornadoes of science. But yeah, those are the two. When Honda made CVCC, it made Honda. Just everybody was like, what? It got everybody's attention, and everybody had to copy it. Everybody had to copy it. But then they made the fucking VTEC patent. And people are like, oh, shit. We don't know how to do that. That's just so much better than anything we can do. Congress. Yeah. They went and whined and lobbied and made sure that cars like the donor car for my motor couldn't make it to America. That would be the 95, 96 Accord SIR. Ow. Brain malfunction. H22A. 2.2 liter VTEC. 200 horsepower. 171 pounds-foot of torque, something like that. I think it might be 163. 163. Which probably means like 161 for the automatic. The US model came with 180 horsepower. The increased compression on the Japanese domestic model brings you to 200 horsepower. So minus the 15 for the automatic drivetrain, as opposed to 8 for a manual. I'm cranking around 180, 182, 3, maybe 5 to the wheels. But that's before I put the port polished exhaust and my nice, cold air box on there. That probably effectively gets it back to where it's supposed to be. That's what I like doing. I like adding just enough power to turn the automatic back into a manual, And that to me is just, wow, that's perfect. You'd have never convinced me, back when I had my Integra, to ever give that Accord a chance. But now that I have that Accord, I cannot lament my Integras. That fucking Accord is a monster. It's that 1.6 liter, ate half of itself. .2 liters. It feels proportionally exactly that much bigger. I mean, that fucking Integra was a 14-second car. Just putting it in drive and hitting the gas. Okay? With my little special light up method, I really think I got it way below that. Around 200 at the crank. Like I said, it's an automatic, so it's going to have a 15 horsepower loss before it gets to the wheels. But I would say, maybe 7 horsepower added at high speeds. Once the air gets flowing into the cold air box, once everything's cooling like it's supposed to. It's probably 207, around there, 205. So then bringing it, you know, like to around 190 at the wheels. And that's an Accord DX from 93, which is the lightest Accord body of the 90s. The 9091 and the EX model are both heavier. Only the DX from 92-93 is the light, has the light header, the lighter header, less trim options, less sound insulation, that kind of thing. So it weighs, I think, 2,200 pounds. It's like 2234. Remember I had it on Gran Turismo? I had the weight looked up when we did the Gran Turismo thing where I had it simulated on there. I had the weight exact for my car on there. But then the H22 actually weighs like 8 or 10 pounds less than the stock 2.2 liter. And this is something that they get wrong on the internet here. Okay? They say, because, you know, like you have your first level of caveman thought before you actually think things through. Well, everybody's just kind of stopped at that point when it comes to the weight difference on CB7.com, CB7 tuner. Did I just say CB7 earlier? Anyway, CB7tuner.com. You have your dual overhead cam engine that looks bigger, so they think must weigh more. The H22 has carbon fiber fucking cylinder walls. The head is made of a much lighter alloy. Even the valve cover is like the same weight as the smaller valve cover from the regular motor. Okay? That motor was designed to be lightweight as a racing engine. And the crank, the pistons, the flywheel, everything about it is just a little bit lighter on the inside. So the way it looks on the outside is just a fucking moot point. Just swap that motor in and don't change anything else about the car. Swap a VTEC motor in where you used to have a regular motor in there. That VTEC motor is going to be lighter every single time. I don't know about the K series, but that applies to all the B and F to H swaps. I also don't know about D series either. I'm just talking about B, you know, B18C to a B16 or a B18C1, you know, a non-VTEC B18 to a VTEC B18, or a 2.2 liter Accord motor to a 2.2 liter Prelude motor. The Prelude motor is going to be a lighter motor even though it looks bigger. And that motherfucker, just turn it in. Just hit the brakes and turn in. And note how your understeer has disappeared because the fucking front end of the car weighs less. Anyway. So yeah. I think if anybody wants to get into the car business and wants to restore old cars, there's a generation that's available right now that is gonna be worth some money here shortly. And I'm hoping there's gonna be some smart people before all these fucking cars go to waste. I hope there's gonna be some smart people that realize the value that can be built into this market that basically doesn't exist right now. Okay, that's a lot of my business plans. They're markets that don't even exist, you know? That's how I know my investors are going to be happy. Hint, hint. Anybody? Uh, well, if you look, like my 93 Accord, okay, is fucking wonderful. But that is an old man's car, okay? It used to be an old granny's car. But the way I have it built, it's still an old man's car because it's not, it precedes the generation that Honda really put that extra effort into safety. That Accord is less safe than a Volvo, okay? From 94 on, Accords are as safe or more safe than Volvos. Pound for pound, okay? Pound for pound. I'm not talking crash a Volvo into an Accord and see who wins. The fucking Volvo's gonna win because they're heavier. But as far as the safety per weight per the class of the car, from 94 with that little wider, more crumple zone intensive, more structurally rigid Accord body style. And then you have the generation after that that can still, the 4 cylinders, an H22 will still bolt right in. That still look pretty damn good. They can look really dated and horrible if they're not done properly. Okay? Right. Fucking Volvos were like built like Cadillacs, the size of Toyotas. It's just bizarre how much metal they cram into that little tiny space, you know. Anyways, but those mid-90s to late 90s Accords, okay, especially that mid-90s body style, that mid-90s body style had a structural rigidity to it that if you look back on the old crash test that only Honda was doing at that time, only Volvo and Honda, but you know, like Volvo got the credit for it. Volvo was the only safe car back then, right? You know, Honda got no credit for it, and they were going to this fucking extra mile, slamming pickup trucks into the side of these fucking Accords, and it's amazing to see, like, really, just sideswipe driver's side by a fucking pickup truck, and it looked like the person would have fucking survived, maybe even walked away. Every one of those bodies, in my mind, deserves to have an H22. Deserves to become a classic. Just a Honda Accord? Sure. But it's the generation of Honda Accord that made Honda dominate. You know? They dominated the front-wheel drive tuner scene because of the Integra, because of the Civic Type R, you know. But when it comes to the car that everybody wanted for a while, everybody was just, let me find one little old lady selling a clean one of these motherfuckers. Boy, that mid-90s Accord. Before they started making the transmission in America. Okay. 94 to the second half of 96. Okay, and in 96, it's really only the V6s that had the problem. Okay, so you can find 4 cylinders all the way up to 98 that were okay. But if you're hunting, I mean, you want to hunt cars with bad motors. I mean, sure, if they're in good condition, they deserve to stay in good condition. But I'm talking about swapping engine and transmission. Cannibalize them old transmission for parts later on or something. The F-Series, you know, the Accord ones. You get that JDM swap. Put it in that 94, 95 Accord. Factory condition. 14.2 second quarter mile. 31 miles to the gallon. Seats 5 comfortably. Big ass trunk space. More than adequate radiator, cooling system, heating system, and the AC, the blower motor, can be swapped out with an Acura CL blower motor. That's what I have in mind. It's nice. I don't even have my fucking AC working. I had replaced it all, but then it leaked out. All brand new AC, brand new OEM parts, OEM fucking condenser expansion, like all the under the dash shit, everything. All the free, I'll leak back out. But I still got the Acura CL blower motor, so you know it blows the warm air very vigorously at me. I'm gonna get that shit. Get the one O-ring wherever the hell it is. I think I know where the one O-ring that was missing when I took it apart. This one O-ring wasn't there, and I think I see on the drawings that there's supposed to be an O-ring there. So I just gonna get the O-ring back there and go pay somebody to vacuum it out and fucking fill it back up, and then I'll have AC in the car. But right now I don't have the power. So let me put y'all on mute and give you a view of the fish tanks for a minute. The family is getting home. Let me get everybody settled in and I'll be right back. Talk amongst yourselves. There's 7 people here. Strike up a conversation. I'll be I'll be back in a minute. And we're back in the fucking house of drama. Minus a couple of kittens that just escaped. Oh, yeah. Oh, that wasn't very helpful. Huh. So, what were we talking about? We were talking about fucking Hondas and shit, weren't we? There are not an unlimited number, a very finite number, but probably more than most people would think. What the hell? Of the 94, 95 Honda Accord bodies out there. And even if they're wrecked a little bit, as long as there's no major frame damage, those things are worth, just like an old Cutlass or Le Mans, like an old Bel Air. Not with the style, you know. I'm not confusing the qualities here. It's got different qualities, but it's gonna be the one of that generation, that otherwise normal car that's just so damn good, people are gonna want it for years to come. Oh, my hands are dirty. Every now and again I see a black spot on something and I think, is it one of them fucking flies? It's so nice not having those goddamn flies in this house. Anyways. Now, you know, that Accord won like Auto Trend and fucking every little automotive award, JD Power and Associates, Car and Driver, Popular Mechanics, all kinds of different awards, right? well known that that's a good car. Was a good car. Nobody fucking gives a shit about it anymore because most people don't know that you can bolt in an H22. But there's one vehicle, before I finally stop talking about fucking Hondas for this broadcast. I might actually get into the metaphor I was planning the whole time, but I'm having so much fun talking about just Hondas himself here. Okay. The most underrated vehicle Honda ever made isn't even a car. It's a 2002 to 2004 Honda CR-V. All-wheel drive. The main things I can tell you about this CR-V, that's the one I own, is it's got a K24 engine. Which one? I don't know. I make an awful lot of Clarkson references. Oh, yeah. Kira's home. Everybody say hi, Kira.
Hi, Kira.
Not you, Kira. So the 2002 to 2004, the reason why not a 2005 is because that's when they let the all-wheel drive system and the power steering both go electronic control. Okay. Before that, it's a real normal power steering pump. You got a normal throttle cable, a normal gasoline style engine, you know, a tunable fucking... No, I think I was in a very Clarkson-esque mood the first time I made that video where I kept on 2002 to 2000. I recommend a 2002 to 2004 Honda CR-V. Which car is best car or something like that. But anyways. So, in 05, they get rid of the throttle cable and they go to electronic. They try to make the all-wheel drive system smarter and fail miserably. And they move the power steering pump over to electronic power steering to save gas mileage. But, you know, the power steering is something I can live with, but the throttle cable, I like having a throttle cable. I like being the one manipulating the motor. I don't like to be putting my foot into a computer and then the computer deciding what to do with the motor. I want a fucking throttle cable. Okay? So, in 2001, you still had the previous generation CR-V, which had a B20, I think, engine. Non-VTEC B series dual overhead cam motor, which can be LS VTEC'd into an Integra head or a VTEC head, and you can get some decent performance out of them. Okay. But the B series wasn't made for high weight applications. It's not made to pull a lot of weight. It's not made for torque. And you're talking about an SUV here, okay? So when it comes to 4 cylinders, the K24, which is the Integra Type R from Japan motor, Okay. And this isn't a non-VTEC version. They have what's called iVTEC, which is sort of a civilian, you know, like a normal, more subdued version of VTEC. It's not the same as the racing engine. Different valve quality, different spring quality, different exhaust, different piston surfaces, different compression rate. And obviously it's not designed to rev as high. But the basis of that engine is still the same fucking engine as the Integra Type R. The most powerful Integra Type R they ever made. In just the same way my H22 has that little bit of torque that gets her done, that K24 with the iVTEC, making sure that the low revs are extra closed up, extra torquey. It's got a real short first gear. And what you probably don't realize looking at them, that second generation body style of CRV, is they're a lot lighter than they look. Now, unfortunately, one of the ways they accomplished this was by getting rid of the dual wishbone suspension in the front and going with the normal McPherson strut setup. But it works. There's just no denying it. It's not as smooth. As far as, you know, the way a dual wishbone setup goes over potholes and shit, nothing is that good. That's like having four-wheeler suspension, you know. It's like having swing arms kind of on each wheel. But it's still just fine. That little bit of extra feel of the bumps in the front from the McPherson struts, that's just fine. Because where they save the weight up in the front, it makes that fucking little truck turn on a dime. That's why they did it. They did it to lighten up the front, to make the chassis more balanced overall. Worthy sacrifice. But I was thinking when I first looked at that thing, sure, it's K24, but it's not the size of those old ones. You know, the first CRV that came out, it was barely bigger than a RAV4 and had a much better engine. And if you find an all-wheel drive one of those, get that sucker and keep it, son. Oh yeah, we had 7 people watching earlier. Yeah. It's almost like a real broadcast. Almost, not quite. There should be like 150 people watching. It should be just like the old clique showing up, you know, but then like the other people too. All that shows up here is the old clique. You know what I mean? But the difference between the body weight and 0.4 liters is apparently more than adequate. All-wheel drive or not. I don't know, isn't that supposed to cause some kind of power loss? I don't fucking know how fast a front-wheel drive one could possibly go. Because that little fucking CRV we have hauls considerable ass. Wouldn't you say, dear? Like, it's just kind of shocking,
I got a
isn't
perfect
it?
story for you.
Okay.
Even as much as it needs work to it right now, because,
Right.
you know, we haven't had the funds to do good upkeeping with it.
Right.
We're doing the bare minimum. I outgunned an Audi at the red light today. because I was not about to sit in that line of traffic, so I was the asshole person who went into the lane that was ending to take off at the red light, and there was an Audi A4 next to me, and the Audi A4.
You couldn't
And
spool up
then
in
there was
time.
me.
Them fucking turbos, man. You can't spool that turbo in time, man. That VTEC downshift snap, you're done. Oh wait, hold up, my turbo's kicking in. I can go faster than you eventually. Yeah, I'm sure you can.
Eventually.
Eventually.
Maybe.
Anyway, now see if it was an A6, obviously she would have lost. But an A4, oh no, your turbo's got a spool. And really, it's only going to give you a little bit more torque than that fucking thing has. And then you're counting on it to weigh more than it looks. I mean, or weigh what it looks like. That thing does not weigh what it looks like. It doesn't. The way it handles, just the way it accelerates with 2.4 fucking liters. Shit. And I drove the 2013, I drove 2011, 2012, 2009, 2014, CRVs, Pilots, Accords, Civics, all of them, V6, 4-cylinder, everything. But all those years of CRV with the K24 specifically, I drove. And this one doesn't look any lighter, maybe a little bit lighter than the 2011, 2009, 2011, those ones. I think that ended in 08, so 09 to 15 or something like that, or 14, and then 15 is the new one. But anyways, same motor in the older ones, K24, 2.4 liter, iVTEC, non-racing, SUV fucking motor. Cast iron cylinders, no weird carbon graphite shit like on the Integras or Preludes, you know. And like the 13 had an extra transmission gear, and it was zippy. It was good enough. Okay? It sounded like it was trying. And that's not right for a Honda, but it was still zippy. It got her done. The ones just before that actually seemed a little more sluggish because they didn't have that extra gear. But it was still impressive enough because it was a 4-cylinder, still making, like, you know, still getting you out in the traffic at a safe rate. You know, under 16 seconds, 0 to 60. So when I got my 04 CRV, I wasn't expecting to have to take it easy on the throttle. You gotta... This thing will lurch. It thinks it's part Shelby Cobra or something. I don't know, like... But it's still... You know, I'm kidding. It's not that responsive, you know. Like my Accord, you get just a little bit into the gas and it's like, how you doing? We're ready. You know, this still has the newer, squishier pedal kind of feel to it. But once you learn how to work that fucking pedal, you know, because it's iVTEC. It may have a throttle cable, but it's still got a little bit of its own decision to make as far as what it does with the throttle response. Once you learn how to keep them fucking revs up in first gear, that thing's a terrible little bitch. You don't need to go but from 3 to 5. You're just going 3,000 to 5,000 RPMs. And that thing is just booking. Just booking. It's got, I think, a 7,200 RPM redline. I would never bring it close to that. I think that the highest we've ever got it was 55, 56 maybe. What do you think? Have you ever seen me take it to $6 grand? on the CRV?
Yeah, you did recently.
Right in the middle is like 55, isn't it? Did I get it past there?
You got it past it recently.
When was that? What were we doing?
I don't remember, but you were pissed at somebody.
Somebody with some bright fucking lights behind us, I think. Yeah. But that's the only time it ever passes 5,500.
Yeah, I think like
I don't think it's happened more than 3 times.
once in a blue moon I might get it over 35. But I'm actually fairly easy on it because I just basically stay around
It's
town.
peppy at the bottom end. Like, you wouldn't
Yeah.
expect it. Like, you think a 4-cylinder should have to rev up. But this fucking thing, that IV Tech, the way it creates back pressure at the bottom end, and I suppose because we do have kind of a clogged catalytic converter, we got back pressure covered. But you know, like, there's a right-hand turn that we take to a 55-mile-an-hour street. Okay, so we have to accelerate into 55-mile-an-hour traffic, which is usually going about 70. They're either going 40 or 70. They're never going 55. If there's a bunch of people, it's like 40. It's just a few cars, or it's like rush hour. It's just a bunch of trucks doing 70, like big fucking pickup trucks. And it's been raining almost incessantly around here. And that fucking little CRV, the rear wheel drive kicks in only when the front wheels slip. So you get good gas mileage most of the time. But when that rear wheel drive kicks in, it's definitely trying to oversteer. And it'll pull you out onto that fucking highway in a hurry, man. It's cool. Yeah, well, actually, in all 3 directions that I can leave this neighborhood from, it's straight on to a 55-mile-an-hour road. And only one of them has a red light. So these are stop signs, and you're waiting for a gap and then punching it, you know? Because I'm polite, so I like to accelerate enough to get the fuck out of people's way. I don't like people hitting the brakes on my account. It's bad for the environment, and it's bad manners. So. There's like that, and this is a perfect segue into the metaphor. There's that happy median that every business, every government, every society, every person, every individual has to achieve. And Honda is a good non-religious example, if you will. You know? They've taken humility and shown that an ethical, ecological approach to car building is actually the secret to getting more power. More power for the dollar that you spend. Every single time. There are faster cars than Honda, but for the amount of horsepower that you're actually putting through your tires down to the road, the amount of fuel that it takes to do that, unless you're driving granny style, you know, obviously a Toyota, obviously. But when it comes to actually having a little bit of fun, when it comes to taking a sharp turn or two, and when it comes to those motors that in touring car trim can just sail past people on the straightaways because that VTEC just lets them open up. Yeah, they don't straight cam the touring cars. They straight cam drag racers, which means they eliminate the VTEC. Some people do, some people don't. But the popular thing for Neanderthal tuning is, you know, yob tuning, basically, is VTEC killer cams. But like a good high quality like Skunk 2, Crower. Well, Crower does make a VTEC killer. I think Skunk 2 wound up making one too, but still. The good quality cam manufacturers will have just different profiles of VTECs on there. And each one's a little bit faster. But each one wastes a little bit more gas mileage, and then if it gets too big, you have to replace the valve train. Anyways. But Honda found this harmony. And actually, it's built into their company. That's why all their cars were named back in the day before the CRV came out. All their cars were named after parts of music. They were all about harmony. And even the Civic, named for its acronym Civic, as in responsibility, harmony. But the whole reason why they named the Accord, it was this philosophy. And that's what it was. It was a musical chord. Made to represent musical harmony. Harmony with the environment, harmony with business. And I think even governments could learn a lot about that. Learn a lot from that. We as a country really missed an opportunity to be like the Honda of the world. You know? We weren't responsible enough. We had too many corrupt, fucking, mostly Republican politicians trying to deregulate things at just the wrong time. Allowing what should have been a new world order, what should have been a sort of unstoppable evolution towards world peace, got fucked up on two ends. Okay? One is that there were some people, they hadn't consolidated power, but there were some people in the Soviet Union who basically oversaw the collapse so that they could consolidate their power. But the thing is, if their attempts to corrupt right-wing crazy fucks in this country weren't successful, it wouldn't have worked, because the way that they consolidated power was through propaganda. Okay? And any good propaganda focuses on shit that's actually happening. You know, obviously things that focus on made-up events are easily debunked and don't wind up very memorable over the course of history. But they had spent a lot of time infiltrating our religious and governmental and business institutions. And by the time the Cold War had ended, there were people, I mean, basically consider it this way. I don't doubt that Bill Browder was a greedy fuck and has used his guilt as far as how greedy he was as sort of a motivation for his little justice crusade now. I don't think he was as greedy of a fuck as they say he was, but I have no doubt that he was a greedy fuck. But in saying that, he was probably one of the best, most ethical, greedy fucks there were. You know? And it wasn't just what should have been a new world business community opening up and peaceful cooperation and divestment and securing future through divestment, okay? It wasn't just a matter of that being replaced with essentially carpet bagging, okay? Instead of doing that with Russia, that's what a lot of different fucking business people from America and Europe and even China tried to fucking do. All over, people were trying to do that shit to Russia, okay? But they had it planned out on the American side. They had the whole thing staged out like a play on the American side. Okay? And they lured in purposely the carpetbagging types for the sake of power consolidating propaganda. Okay? Because how long do you think Putin was planning to seize that shit before he just went and says, I has it now? Because that's what he eventually did. You think he just decided that shit while he was having a fucking, shot off of some whore's chest? I don't know. What does he do with his free time? I was drinking some vodka last night, and I decided I'm going to take all the companies. Yeah, they're just going to be fucking mine now. I'm pretty sure he put a little thought into that ahead of time. But at the same time, because of how decadent and just distractible our society, America, and the whole West had become, every greedy fucking their cousins all got together to go to every former communist country and every country that was on the fence and every country where we couldn't do business anymore, and they just tried to fuck over all kinds of people. It was capitalism gone wild, and it's fucking shameful. But control, and I do control over CNN and Fox News. Oh yeah, both of them. America would have been electing people that were not some range between or amalgamation of crazy Bible thumping fucking retards and greedy traitors and racist, greedy, Bible thumping, retarded traitors. Did I leave anything out? The same way in Donbass, how they would fund criminals, just fund local mafia thugs and have them do their fucking dirty work for them. It's just a version of that wears nice suits here in America. Whether they're in front of a congregation or a car lot. They know how to find the people that they want on pedestals in a given society. Okay? The same way they control celebrities, they control crime. They control corruption. They control politics. They influence with nudging and supplementation and funding and support. Support. Lots of different types of support. Support in the form of a CNN story. Support in the form of a Fox News attack on your enemies. Support in the form of a random $400 million Russian investor. Oh, well. It was more fun talking about Hondas. Oi. I'm tired of holding it. Like, my hand's gonna, like, be permanently stuck like this from holding the phone. Anyways. So from Joel Osteen and Pat Robertson and what's the 700 Club guy's name? Oh wait, no, that is Pat Robertson. Pat Buchanan. Apparently they like guys named Pat. Because, you know, no one suspects the Irish. I don't know. At the time when Pat Buchanan was rising into far right-wing libertarianism, there happened to be a little bit of a thing with Ireland and Russia, Gaddafi. Yeah. But that's all in the past. Just happens to be the past that Pat Buchanan fucking rose out of. But anyways, I love Pat Buchanan. He's an interesting model for leprechaun clothing. I mean, what? Yeah. Oh, don't you know that's the sound of the Death Star? Grant, never mind. I think Conway gets it. It's the Death Star. It's not a moon. It's not a moon. It's a Death Star.
I'm about to explode like the Death Star.
Mer. Calling in the bomb squad.
Mute that for a second.
All right, hold on, y'all. I need to talk to my wifey poo. Okay. Apparently, some sort of a cat rescue is being attempted. You know what you do is you have Layla stand at the door and start one of the cars. It's not a moose. It's not a moose. It's not a moose. Oh no. No, 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 no. Okay, so what the hell was I talking about? It wasn't cats. Really? My Babylon 5 impersonation? Gonna buffer for that? Veer, what are those earth creatures? They have webbed feet and they say quack. Cats? Yes, cats! Feels like being nibbled to death by 1,000 tiny little cats. Laney? No. Come here, fucker. Come here. You're a bad kid. Say hello to the bad kitty. This little fucker's getting wrapped up in a blanket until the other one gets inside and the door is closed. Anyways. So, now I'm holding a kitten prisoner. Yep, you're not going anywhere, are you? Charging. He's just kind of bundled up. I can't pull it. There's the cord right there. I can't pull it back any further. But I can put on the light. You're not going anywhere, you little dummy. Anyways. Ugh. So, Looks like Trump still hasn't made his little speechy. Cut it out. I tell you what, man, it could be some kind of fucking weird power grab. And he better realize. Fucking.
Oh, fuck you.
Fucking asshole. Jesus Christ. He got out of the prison.
Oh, skin your ass.
Get the other one?
No, I can't find her. She's out on one of her adventures.
Oh, jeez.
At least she can't come back pregnant. Asshole.
Well, shit.
So he's not started talking yet?
No.
It's 9 o'clock over there.
Yeah, I just cut it off. Looks like everybody's getting ready for it now.
I was just wondering.
Yet the NBC live stream has disappeared from my scroll.
Okay.
Huh. Isn't that odd? CBS. I was just looking at an NBC one. There it is. It's still up. It just got eliminated from my subscriptions list. Let me go ahead and document that. Here we have the NBC News thing that I've been watching. Yeah, okay. Or to stabilize the camera on my knee. And there it is in my history. It was in my subscriptions feed. Now we have ABC, PBS, Now This News, and CBS. CBS twice. Okay. CBS, The National, and then CBS. Oh, I got to go way down here to go to. Okay, so their live streams are on top. Last time I just scrolled through here, that wasn't even there. Neither was that. Al Jazeera and NBC. Hmm. Well, isn't that special?
Certainly be challenging for Democratic leader.
Let's all just pray that he fucking resigns.
There's a heart attack on the way to the podium.
I think the funniest way would be spontaneous human combustion.
Tonight,
Don't you, my fellow Americans, me,
because there
motherfucker.
is a growing humanitarian and security crisis at our southern border.
Every
Every day, Customs and Border Patrol agents encounter thousands of illegal immigrants trying to enter our country. We are out of space to hold them, and we have no way to promptly return them back home to their country. America proudly welcomes millions
We
of
have no
lawful
buses,
immigrants who
no
enrich
cars,
our society and contribute to
no
our
donkeys.
nation. But all Americans are hurt by uncontrolled illegal migration. It strains public resources and drives down jobs and wages. Among those hardest hit are African Americans and Hispanic Americans. Our southern border is a pipeline for vast quantities of illegal drugs, including meth, heroin, cocaine, and fentanyl.
Dingo.
Every week, 300 of our citizens are killed by heroin alone, 90% of which
And the
flows
wall
across
isn't going to do
from
shit
our
to any of
southern
that.
border. More Americans will die from drugs this year than were killed in the entire Vietnam War.
Thanks, Russia.
In the last 2 years, ICE officers made 266,000 arrests of aliens with criminal records, including those charged or convicted of 100,000 assaults, 30,000 sex crimes, and 4,000 violent killings. Over the years, thousands of Americans have been brutally killed by those who illegally entered our country, and thousands more lives will be lost if we don't act right now. This is a humanitarian crisis, a crisis of the heart, and a crisis of the soul. Last month, 20,000 migrant children were illegally brought into the United States, a dramatic increase. These children are used as human pawns by vicious coyotes
In my
and
scheme
ruthless gangs.
to build this wall.
1 in 3 women are sexually assaulted on the dangerous trek up through Mexico. Women and children are the biggest victims, by far, of our broken system. This is the tragic reality of illegal immigration on our southern border. This is the cycle of human suffering that I am determined to end. My administration has presented Congress with a detailed proposal to secure the border and stop the criminal gangs, drug smugglers, and human traffickers. It's a tremendous problem. Our proposal was developed by law enforcement professionals and border agents at the Department of Homeland Security. These are
That,
the
like me,
resources
hate brown
they have
people.
requested to properly perform their mission and keep America safe. In fact, safer than ever before. The proposal from Homeland Security includes cutting-edge technology for detecting drugs, weapons, illegal contraband, and many other things. We have requested more agents, immigration judges, and bed space to process the sharp rise in unlawful migration fueled by our very strong economy. Our plan also contains an urgent request for humanitarian assistance and medical support. Furthermore, we have asked Congress to close border security loopholes so that illegal immigrant children can be safely and humanely returned back home. Finally, as part of an overall approach to border security, law enforcement professionals have requested $5.7 billion for a physical barrier. At the request of Democrats, it will be a steel barrier rather than a concrete wall. This barrier is absolutely
At the
critical
request of
to border
Democrats, huh?
security. It's also what our professionals
What a
at the
crock of
border
shit.
want and need. This is just common sense. The border wall would very quickly pay for itself. The cost of illegal drugs
So,
exceeds
a steel barrier
$500
with holes in
billion
it.
a year.
You mean like a fence?
Vastly more than the $5.7
That's what they already
billion
have
we
there.
have requested from
That you
Congress.
said wasn't good enough.
The wall will also
That's why you wanted a
pay
wall.
for indirectly
But
by
you're
the
going to build a
great new
fence.
trade deal we have made with Mexico. Senator Chuck Schumer, who you will be hearing from later tonight, has repeatedly supported a physical barrier in the past, along with many other Democrats. They changed their mind only after I was elected president. Democrats
No,
in
because you
Congress
wanted to build a
have
concrete
refused to
fucking
acknowledge
wall.
the crisis. And they have refused to provide our brave border agents with the tools they desperately need to protect our families.
No, they
and
sent you a
our
bill.
nation.
You vetoed it.
The federal government remains shut down
Fucking
for
twit.
one reason, and one reason only, because Democrats will not fund border security. My administration
Except for the
is
bill
doing
that they passed
everything in
and
our
funded.
power to help those impacted by the situation. But the only solution is for Democrats to pass a spending bill that defends our borders and reopens the government. This situation
That
could
you
be
shut
solved
down
in a 45-minute
by vetoing a
meeting.
bill.
I
They
have
already
invited
did everything that you're
congressional leadership to the
asking.
White House tomorrow.
You just can't get this fucking stupid shit out of your head.
Hopefully, we can rise above partisan politics in order to support national security. Some have suggested a barrier is immoral. Then why do wealthy politicians build walls, fences, and gates around their homes? They don't build walls because they hate the people on the outside, but because they love the people on the inside. The only thing that is immoral is the politicians to do nothing and continue to allow more innocent people to be so horribly victimized. America's
You mean like the
broke
children you separated
after
from their
Christmas,
fucking parents?
when a young police officer in California was savagely murdered in cold blood by an illegal alien who just came across the border. The life of an American hero was stolen by someone who had no right to be in our country. Day after day, precious lives are cut short by those who
They
have
should be murdered by
violated
Americans.
our borders.
What?
In California, an Air
The fuck is
Force
the difference?
veteran was raped, murdered, and beaten to death with a hammer by an illegal alien with a long criminal history. In Georgia, an illegal alien was recently charged with murder for killing, beheading, and dismembering his neighbor. In Maryland, MS-13 gang members who arrived in the United States as unaccompanied minors were arrested and charged last year after viciously stabbing and beating a 16-year-old girl. Over the last several years, I've met with dozens of families whose loved ones were stolen.
And as you know, the citizens of this country never do anything to harm each other. It's only immigrants.
Grief-stricken fathers. So sad. So terrible. I will never forget the pain in their eyes, the tremble in their voices, and the sadness gripping their souls. How much more American blood must we shed before Congress does its job? To those who refuse to compromise in the name of border security, I would ask, imagine if it was
Right.
your child, your husband, or your wife whose life was so cruelly shattered and totally
By
broken.
Nicholas Cruz.
To every member of Congress, pass a bill that ends this crisis. To every citizen, call Congress and tell them to finally, after all of these decades, secure our border. This is a choice between right and wrong.
So let's be more like the Soviets and build a wall.
This is about whether we fulfill our sacred duty to the American citizens we serve. When I took the oath of office, I swore to protect our country.
Bullshit.
And that is what I will always do. So help me God. Thank you and good night.
President Trump live from the Oval Office with about an 8 or 9.
Uh-huh. By the end of that speech, he was kind of like talking out of one eye. It was kind of weird looking. Maybe he's having a heart attack right now. A stroke. Maybe a stroke. Yeah, a stroke. That way he can drool on himself in jail. I want him to die of an aneurysm in prison while he's being butt-fucked on video. By Bubba. Bubba's little cell phone video. Make a little repeated GIF out of it. He dies of an aneurysm right as Bubba gets him to say, "You're my daddy. You're my daddy. You're my daddy." And then he just dies. Where's Misha, Laney?
Where's your sister?
Laney, where's Misha? Where's Misha?
Where's your sister?
Where is she? Night, Joey. So anyways, here we have Pelosi and Schumer.
American people tonight about how we can end this shutdown and meet the needs of the American people. Sadly, much of what we heard from President Trump throughout this senseless shutdown has been full of misinformation and even malice. The president has chosen fear. We want to start with the facts. The fact is, on the very first day of this Congress, House Democrats passed Senate Republican legislation to reopen government and fund smart, effective border security solutions. But the president is rejecting these bipartisan bills which would reopen government over his obsession with forcing American taxpayers to waste billions of dollars on an expensive and ineffective wall. a wall he always promised Mexico would pay for. The fact is, President Trump has chosen to hold hostage critical services for the health, safety, and well-being of the American people and withhold the paychecks of 800,000 innocent workers across the nation, many of them veterans. He promised to keep government shut down for months or years, no matter whom it hurts. That's just plain wrong. The fact is, we all agree we need to secure our borders while honoring our values. We can build the infrastructure and roads at our ports of entry. We can install new technology to scan cars and trucks for drugs coming into our nation. We can hire the personnel we need to facilitate trade and immigration at the border. We can fund more innovation to detect unauthorized crossings. The fact is, the women and children at the border are not a security threat. They are a humanitarian challenge, a challenge that President Trump's own cruel and counterproductive policies have only deepened. And the fact is, President Trump must stop holding the American people hostage, must stop manufacturing a crisis, and must reopen the government. Thank you. Peter Schumer?
Thank you, Speaker Pelosi. My fellow Americans, we address you tonight for one reason only. The President of the United States, having failed to get Mexico to pay for his ineffective, unnecessary border wall, and unable to convince the Congress or the American people to foot the bill, has shut down the government. American democracy doesn't work that way. We don't govern by temper tantrum. No president should pound the table and demand he gets his way, or else the government shuts down, hurting millions of Americans who are treated as leverage. Tonight, and throughout this debate and throughout his presidency, President Trump has appealed to fear, not facts, division, not unity. Make no mistake, Democrats and the president both want stronger border security. However, we sharply disagree with the president about the most effective way to do it. So, how do we untangle this mess? Well, there's an obvious
Impeach.
solution. Separate the shutdown from arguments over border security. There is bipartisan legislation supported by Democrats and Republicans to reopen government while allowing debate over border security to continue. There is no excuse for hurting millions of Americans over a policy difference. Federal workers are about to miss a paycheck. Some families can't get a mortgage to buy a new home. Farmers and small businesses won't get loans they desperately need. Most presidents have used Oval Office addresses for noble purposes. This president just used the backdrop of the Oval Office to manufacture a crisis, stoke fear, and divert attention from the turmoil in his administration.
And he almost fell asleep doing it.
There is no challenge so great that our nation cannot rise to meet it. We can reopen the government and continue to work through disagreements over policy. We can secure our border without an ineffective, expensive wall. And we can welcome legal immigrants and refugees without compromising safety and security. The symbol of America should be the Statue of Liberty, not a 30-foot wall. So our suggestion is a simple one. Mr. President, reopen the government and we can work to resolve our differences over border security, but end this shutdown.
It looks like a staff photo.
Thank you.
That the Democrats' response to the president's remarks, they also not turning over a lot of new territory here, the same arguments we've been hearing from the Democratic side. Let me bring in Casey Hunt. She's been following all this closely and joins us from Capitol Hill. Senator Schumer noted this idea of separating.
Only this time, maybe
the
Fox
shutdown,
News will
those
actually
issues
get to hear it,
from the wall.
which would be
Is
nice.
that showing any?
Because I'm sure Fox News actually played that. Maybe. I think they played it. Yeah, they probably played it. Oh. Really, Casey Hunt with the black rim glasses? Jeez. I don't hear what you saying.
Republicans in the House that we expect might vote with the approach that House Speaker Nancy Pelosi just laid out there to open up pieces of the government.
But then again, this whole thing is just bullshit. The whole thing. the whole fact that we're discussing immigration right now, when the issue at hand is Russia just attacked us again in another election. Facebook CEO called Congress. Mueller shit. Indictments. Pleadings. Sentencings. Quick, we gotta build the wall. I need a wall between me and the Russia investigation. I mean, the Mexicans. I mean, the money trail. Yeah. Let's see. CNN's first YouTube headline. Trump. Democrats refuse to acknowledge border crisis. And I'm sure they got two talking heads debating. But that's just an interesting headline, isn't it? So close to being neutral, yet so far away. Critics mock Pence's awkward Trump defense. Max, what's going on, bro? You can't actually take a stand for logic itself and just say Pence's awkward Trump defense. No. Critics. Because we, the media, we CNN, the media, are impartial. Oh, yeah. We are impartially perpetuating idiocy and totally prejudiced towards reason. Yeah, that's CNN. Oh, but how nice of them to have another upload about the lawmaker speaking out after the impeach the motherfucker remark. Not lawmaker speaks out after critics say this or that about her remarks. Well, they got, quote, impeach mother F, asterisk, 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 quote, remark. Yeah. So close to being impartial, yet so far away. Oh, and oh, Jim Acosta. Oh, got to talk about Jim Acosta some more. Because nothing drives rednecks crazy like Jim Acosta, basically. It's the whole reason why he exists. Not because he's a good journalist, which he is, I suppose. But he's a poster child target. Him and his Latinness and his pushy Latinness, you know. The liberal media. Oh, the liberal media. CNN. Oh yeah, sure. Give giving all that airtime to Trump. And all he has to do to control what they say is put out a new lie. There's actual news happening other than Trump's lies. You know, there's things that people need to be made aware of, like how everything Trump does plays into Putin's hands. Everything Trump does makes us weaker in just the ways Russia's been trying to make us weak for so long. Follows the same patterns, hits all the same targets. You see, there is a man who doesn't understand power or what to do with it, because he's been reliant on his treason for his success. He's never actually had any power for himself. The power of the presidency is actually the most power he's ever had, and he doesn't even know what to do with it. Doesn't know how to be subtle. Doesn't know how to speak softly and carry a big stick. There is a not so subtle difference between rallying a nation to defend itself or to unite for a given cause, and trying to bring about a fascist state through fear-mongering. You see, this is the action of somebody who doesn't have any power, doesn't have any wisdom, doesn't have the ability to plan things for themselves, doesn't actually have the ability to make a deal. You know, I said it once, but I'll say it again. The person who should be the famous Art of the Deal author, okay, just to give you an idea of how much Russia has always influenced what is popular, okay, how much connections with old communist agents, CNN anchors, things like that, have managed to paint him as this brilliant sales genius when he's not. Grant Cardone, half his age, twice the fucking sales genius, okay? And really, JQ motivational speaker is better at sales process and deal making than fucking Trump. Which is why the Art of the Deal is a mixture between plagiarizing other con artists and narcissistic dribble. But anyways, those who should have power, when they achieve power, they wear it gracefully. Be wary of someone who is given great power and still acts insecurely, because behind their congenial facade is total madness and destruction. This has happened before. It always leads to the same places. None of them are good. And it's just so tiresome seeing the lack of unity around what's important, and seeing how fucking easily we are distracted by things that should not be issues. You know who wouldn't veto a reasonable immigration bill, but would still make damn sure it was tough? Well, Hillary Clinton. But you know who else would do a pretty damn good job? Pelosi. And I can guarantee you, fucking Pence would have signed that bill. So, why do we have this asshole with the temperament of a Tasmanian devil on meth falling asleep giving fucking speeches? He's trying to make people afraid, and he can't even get into it enough to keep himself awake. He's like, by the end of the speech, he's got one eye closed. Like, he took a nap right there at the desk when that fucking camera went off, man. I tell you what. It's a shame seeing the actual potential of America and how much of that potential has been stifled because our enemies knew how to capitalize on our weaknesses. And when it comes down to weaknesses, I'm talking like basically the same weaknesses that almost turned Pinocchio into a little donkey. Okay? Everybody just wants to... Well, first of all, it's a cycle. Okay? Everybody winds up just wanting to get away from the world. Okay? And getting in their little entertainment niches and not really paying attention to anything until it blows up into a big issue like shutting down the government over a fucking wall. Because from a young age, the innocent perceive the breakdowns of society and jade themselves to it. And anyone who wants to govern other people, the test we need to have for them to make sure that they're not some corrupt asshole that's just saying the right thing is, do they hang on to that childlike spirit of wanting to make the world a better place, of genuinely wanting to help people get their shit back together? And if you don't have original ideas that would impress the technologists of today, what the fuck are you doing even trying to run for president? We all need to really get real about our expectations of what a leader should be. Because these assholes are just disappointing across the board. Okay? But one of the reasons why we don't have somebody who understands moral leadership and technology is because of, again, that same breakdown that's been sown in our society, from the corruption of churches to the promotion of pseudo-atheism, or pseudoscience-based atheism, and setting these two sides against each other. That led to a generation of people on the internet finding something to fill the void that the truth would have kept full if they had ever had it. But because of people like that fucking guy that looked like Carter Page's grandpa, that reminded me of the Apostle Paul, came to my church, came to my advanced fellowship Bible study group thing. I was like with like lawyers and shit. And like I was the youngest person in there. It was my dad's study group. And just talk this good game nonsense. And had that same back and forth like Joel Osteen. My friends. And I remember like the Power Team and, you know, the guys that would like rip phone books and bend rebar and shit. And like traveling idea salesmen, often book salesmen too, and videos and shit like. But what you don't realize is that they're idea salesmen. And the reason why they got a fucking connection to get a publisher, to get a manager, to get a bus and all this shit, the reason why they got started, it's never to do with what's on that little documentary of them back in the 70s when they had mullets. Okay? They all got one of them little documentaries, though. They all got a little clip show with narration and captions and their little fucking high school photograph. Oh, yeah. You can trust this person. You know exactly who they are. You ever have a good idea? You ever realize something? You ever realize something that everybody needs to know? You ever try to get the idea out? Ever come up with a great story? Ever come up with something better than Star Trek or something like that? You know? Your best hope is to get published in a list of other people that get published. Your idea is not going to get out among the paid shills because they are in so many places that they control the fucking public conversation. The ones who get their ideas out, there's a process. It either involves direct collusion, as it were, or a process of screening by ideology. That is, We know that this person has been thoroughly brainwashed and will never do anything other than what we can expect them to. So fun them. And they're a friend of this person or a friend of this person anyways. That's why all these fuckers wind up friends. All from, a lot of the times from the same neighborhoods. Other times marrying people who are different, you know, like there's so many weird little associations here and there. And somewhere somebody's parents are from Poland. Every fucking time. From Russia, from St. Petersburg, from Belarus, from some Soviet country that was definitely white. And they don't believe in God, but they're Jewish. Okay. I find that entertaining. Because it's stupid. Anyway. So whether you're talking about Larry King, Wolf Blitzer, Rupert Murdoch, Joy Behar. I truly love Joy Behar. She was recognized by people who might have been even her cousins. Might have just been allegedly her cousins. Her parents survived the fucking Holocaust, if I'm not mistaken. She came over here when she was a little girl. And Dingo don't care. I know Dingo don't care, you fucking racist bastard. You're from the ghetto. How can you be racist? Wait, are you one of those black people that don't like Jews? Anyways. He's looking at me some kind of stupid right now. The face he's giving me. Oh, come on. Don't look away right... Dingo. There it is. That's the face. Dingo, are you racist? Just, fuck are you talking about? Anyways, what the fuck was I talking about?
I'm still trying to find the damn headshot.
That one you had looked like a perfectly adequate, like, work type photo.
I came across a couple.
And it's recent, so it looks like you do now. So, I mean, that's...
I had a couple that don't look too far off.
Right.
Like longer hair with the same
I
color.
mean, you're not going for a glamour shot or the whole plastic surgery Photoshop effect like this. Her fucking billboard sign.
That's just way too much Photoshop.
Like they took Tyra Banks and her and just kind of like morphed them together.
And sprinkled some Beyonce on top.
Sprinkle some crack on it. Anyways. But like, okay, Joy Behar is a good example of someone who I know has a good heart. Who I know wouldn't fucking tolerate either some liberal bullshitism or fascist takeover, okay? She's like one of them people who's like, Bernie's nice, but you know? Good woman, okay? Funny as shit, too. But picked for not just how funny she was, but essentially how far as a soul they've fallen, you know? How much has the propaganda caused them to lose faith? How much of that propaganda do they repeat? Do they expound upon? Do they reinforce with their acts? Bill Maher. I want to say Bill Maher is a good man. But if I were to sit there and vouch for Bill Maher being a good man, if Bill Maher were to watch this, he'd probably bust out laughing. Like John Lovett says, I'm not a Jew, I'm Jew-ish. Bill Maher's not good, he's good-ish. Very propagandized on the anti-religious side. And as close as you come to being directly collusive. But not quite a Bernie baby still. Not quite, you know? Like Joy Behar, pretty close. In the crowd where it was sort of trendy to give lip service support. But both of them knew fucking Hillary Clinton was the mean bitch that we needed, you know? The grumpy old grandma. But a grandma nonetheless. And any of the cringe moments that you see from her, it's a matter of perspective. If you remember, that's a granny. That's a fucking Southern granny who like lives in a like a country estate type environment now. Likes to walk in the woods, you know. She's old granny. And then you see her dancing and looking stupid. And it's like, oh, look at Granny trying to dance. It's not like, how dare Hillary try to blend in and, you know, like, oh, it's such demon possession when it comes down to it. That's what it is. You react because you're fucking possessed by demons that have been programmed into you. And it triggers an emotional response. They control how you react to things. As soon as they trigger that emotion, the emotion re-triggers all the brainwashing, and then your brain has to perceive things on that level. And you can't just see, there's a human being right there. And there's nothing wrong with being a human being. It ain't what you do, it's the way that you do it, you know? That's what gets results. Do I? Wait, that's a different song. I'm mixing up my swings. No, well, it don't mean a thing. Wah. I'm gonna put the phone down now, right here. I'm about to call her broadcast, actually. What the fuck was I saying? How should I wrap it up?
With a bow.
With a bow? I was just thinking of a Honda. Yeah, Hondas are nice with bows on them. That generally means you don't have to pay for this. That's what bows mean. Until America can recognize what took the stone from beneath it, it's going to remain on sand. Okay? Each one of these pseudo-facts that made people hate Christians, each one of these pseudo-facts that made people hate gay people, each one of these pseudo-facts that made Christians seem more religiositous or whatever, eventually turning them into the, quote, evangelicals. Each one of these things are a sandbag where a stone used to be. And it's bad enough that with our debt, we're basically a house of cards. But we're a house of cards upon the sand. So that's, that's bad in two ways. But we can't solve the house of cards problem until we solve the foundation problem. You can't rebuild the house on sand. We've got to find those stones we're missing and put them back in place. Or we don't have any of the power that we think we have. All we have is ammunition. There's a difference. We don't have the ability to sustain a conflict. We don't have an ability to unify against an enemy. We don't have power as a country until we realize what's happened to us. Until we go back, not to point fingers and find who to blame, but to take people as case studies and say this is how they might have been influenced from Eastern propaganda. This is how this Eastern propaganda traveled. This is how this Eastern propaganda caused the destruction of our unity as a country. And without unity, we have no power. Doesn't matter how many aircraft carriers, how many subs, how many tanks, how many missiles, how many guns, how many infrared eyepieces. Those boys out there, they're our power, okay? Our soldiers out there. All of NATO. But they need our unity, or else all they have is ammunition. And when it comes time for a political decision, when it comes time for sustaining a conflict, God forbid, without unity, chances are a lot of those boys are going to be left to die whenever they run out of ammunition. Chances are without unity, those countries, those lines, NATO is only going to hold as long as those soldiers have ammunition. Because when it comes to organizing the society to resupply at a rate that's required to sustain a conflict, when it's required to, when it's time to support the troops, to unify, we question everything about our very intelligence services. We question everything anyone's telling us anymore. How the fuck are we supposed to unify and start supplying our armies when we can't even unify to fund food stamps. We have no power right now. We are not in such a weakened state as we're just babies waiting to have candy stolen from us. But when it comes to scales and how they would eventually tilt, we are not in a state, a mental, sociological state, as a country, as an alliance, as a civilization, that could get its shit together and actually defend itself. We used to be, not long ago. Even if it was just religion that held us together. But we don't even have that anymore. Because there were seeds sown inside of that gradually destroyed it from within. And until we realize what caused all the foundation stones to crumble, what sort of weeds grew in there and cracked apart the stones, we can't keep it from happening again. And we sure can't start rebuilding our own house. Because there's always going to be somebody rallying people to a reasonable disagreement. And they're always going to have support. You know? Even if it's just in the form of Russian likes and comments, or paid Canadians. So, that's the power of the truth. When it all comes down to it, the power of the truth is the reason why those lies are here. Their purpose is to divide us, to make us weak. And all I've been trying to do for 3 or 4 freaking years on this channel now and in general is try to find topics of interest and topics of economics and business and productivity, as well as debunking of the past in ways that provides, you know, you can't force an idea down their throat. You can't force anybody to believe anything. But you can say, this makes more sense. And if we all agree on this thing that makes more sense, we don't have to be pissed off at each other anymore. I think it's fair to say that I presented a lot of those things. But, you know, Honda likes to build cars for every day. You know, they like to build race cars, they like to build motorcycles, but when it comes to building cars, they like to build what people need. Not just what they want. They like to give them what they want, but they like to try to focus on what they need. And that's the right kind of power, if you ask me. That's why Honda always has the right kind of power. You know, from the first generation CRV. Dingo, that's enough. To the next, they had the right displacement, the 2.0 liter to the 2.4 liter. Keeping up with the times, power to weight ratio, gearing. It's never far off in a Honda. And I don't think that God should have to interfere and force people to do things that they don't want to do. Okay? I don't think that the world should have to fucking be judged and made to bow down, you know? The truth has just the right amount of power to it. No matter what the group of people that you're talking to is, no matter what their politics, no matter what their motivations, when it all comes down to it, the truth, God, the plan, the universe, whatever you want to call it, the truth seems to know how to accomplish what they really want more than they can even fathom it for themselves. When it comes to a time of lies, when lies are interfering with free will itself, and humanity is becoming enslaved mentally, the truth should be just the right amount of power. But sometimes people just don't listen. Sometimes some asshole is driving a V8 to work, and your stock Honda cam just ain't good enough for him. Sometimes the truth, you know, can't stop bullets. Sometimes you need more ammunition. If everyone's gonna bow down to the power of God and see his judgment, they must choose to do so voluntarily, which means they must bear witness to such a spectacle. Such an accurate prophecy, such a miracle of judgment. that they are left with only two choices. Acknowledge the truth, or face the reality of judgment. Because it is that point where humanity will realize no matter what they do, they exist by the grace of God alone, and are essentially, even in the universe that they seem to crave the existence of, as powerless as insects. In a universe that you'd prefer over God in the minds of these atheist propagandists is basically one filled with boots waiting to stomp down on the tiny little insects called humans. And you see, when it comes to a metaphor like an angel casting a millstone and the obviousness of that it's a meteor, consider this. How many times has humanity been on the path to destruction and been saved from it without their concern even being noted? Can you just imagine for a second? You know, what killed the dinosaurs? How many different things could have killed the dinosaurs? How many of those things could happen now? Wasn't one of them supposed to happen in 2012? How is it that there's so much flying around in space? There's so many different dark shit and black holes and everything else, and we're just not destroyed. God doesn't have to do anything malicious. In order to get people all at once to just choose of technical free will, still technical free will, what they would have to see is what happens when God stops protecting them for an instant. One hour. I can feel that hour coming as if it were a tide of water flowing over me. Nine years on. Let's hope. Ask an astrophysicist what's happening in 2028, where they think it's gonna hit. And then go ask somebody like my dad, or somebody who's studied the Bible way too much and like said, John Hagee's wrong and here's the real truth. One of those guys that's done the math. And they came up with 2028. And I'm seeing that time frame that was explained to me by these very studious men. And it all makes sense right there in the book of Revelation. You see, if you're sitting there thinking of the Catholic Church or America or this and that or Iraq's gonna, this is what the Hagiites and a lot of them people thought, that Iraq was gonna become like the center of the world. Iraq was gonna be the new Paris, the new New York, the new Beijing, the new Moscow. Baghdad was gonna rise, be Babylon again. No, it was never Babylon. Ever. What you think of as Babylon was essentially some trading posts. Sultanates, excuse me. But when you acknowledge the history of the past century, when you acknowledge what the Cold War really is, what their propaganda targeted, how they targeted Christianity itself, not a religion in particular, but the unifying Christ spirit behind them. What was eventually kind of causing denominations to lose their denominationist, denominimity. Let's just make that a word. Denominity. Okay. Anyways. My fingers are going numb. I gotta call it a broadcast. But, I think I made the point. Am I finished? Am I done?
Yes, you're done.
I made the point.
Yes. The point's been made.
Once you realize it's Russia, once you realize that Russia is just a word, once you realize it's the Horde, once you realize that that is the power behind Babylon, ancient and present, everything about 2028 lines up. And the fact that so many of these right-wing pundits are, turns out many of them might be connected even directly to Russia, mixed with the recent strategic moves of Vladimir Putin. It's kind of like this. Whether or not it's real, I think they believe it's real. And I think they're going to try to cause a big fucking war and try to invade elsewhere, thinking that that's going to be how they save themselves. They having infused this prophecy. Must have done so for a reason. Because, unlike in our lovely democratic society here, there's no need for unity to maintain power in Putin's empire. And what they do with that power is always done for a reason. Whether it be a self-fulfilling prophecy or a fear of an actual truth, of an imminent destruction. They seem to be acting accordingly, don't they? Satan knows his time is up, so he makes his last move. Pretty sure I learned that in Sunday school at some point. Anyways, y'all take it easy, don't take it at all. Don't forget the like button and subscribe and all that good jazz. I see I got 7 likes already, so I can't fucking complain about that, right? Thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for chatting. Thanks.